Hi, I'm Kristin McLaughlin.
And I am Tammie McClafferty, and we are your co-hosts. Welcome to The Misfits, a show designed for Christian working women of all ages to bring their messy lives to the couch with a cup of coffee
And maybe a margarita.
to laugh and learn together. We hope that we will bring you 4 different weeks, 4 different topics. The first one being each month a life, and that was last week. That it's just kind of our life, our mess, all that's happening.
Right. And the second week, we're going to do a lesson, a Bible character that we can sort of talk to, learn from, and hopefully pass along some wisdom about.
Then the third one is going to be our legend, and that's when we hope to bring you a legend, somebody in our lives, somebody in our sphere, but just bring a guest to the show that would be a legend in our world and share their story with you.
And then the last one, which I think is going to be one of our favorites, is we would like to bring you laughter and have you bring your laughter to us. And so we are going to do it in person and invite you to join us. So we'll get to the details of that later. But today is a lesson session, and we're going to sip through the life of Lydia. That was very cute.
Sip through.
Yeah, I like
Did you get that?
Yeah. And hopefully relieve some of the stress of hosting Easter by unpacking sort of, I have to read this because she wrote this, unpacking a basket full of what God's word truly says about hospitality.
And today's podcast is brought to you by Cup of Job Community Cafe. This is a redemptive enterprise that is serving and employing various demographics in areas of need that has been launched by LifeWork Leadership. It uses coffee as a tool to bring and build relationships in the community. You can stop by our beach or Murray Hill location and or book our coffee trailer for any event. Check us out at www.cupofjob.com or at lifeworkleadershipfirstcoast.com. Seek, serve, sip. Seek Jesus, serve others, one sip at a time at Cup of Job Cafe.
So, peeps, are you ready? Good job.
I think we did an intro.
We did an intro. We are listening to your feedback, and we very much appreciate the feedback.
And so that was a lot of feedback that we needed an intro.
We did. And we got one.
We needed sponsorships.
Yeah.
And we got that. So we got that done.
And you were very funny about the Easter thing.
Well, I thought the Easter thing was fun because we're coming in, right? Peeps, basket full. So
I don't know what you were doing, but it was a very creative
I had a moment on my front porch with the birds chirping.
Oh, it was a moment like that. Nice.
It was a moment. But let us know what you think.
Yeah.
I think if that's an intro that we're going to stay with, we'll get better at it.
Yeah,
we obviously
won't have
had
to read
it, but I think as we get better at it, we wanted to make sure we encapsulated everything we wanted in that, which is who we are, what we're doing, why we're here. That was kind of the idea.
Exactly.
So hopefully we'll do it and see how it goes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like it.
For us. Look at us being more professional.
Good job. So let's talk about Lydia.
Okay.
What you got? So Tammie and I have both been studying Lydia the last couple of weeks, I would say, right? And I think we each have brought some different perspectives to it. Some common perspectives too, of course. But so really what I think is so interesting is that Lydia has 3, I think maybe 5 verses in Acts 16 in the New Testament. But yet we hear and we talk about Lydia a lot. And if you're a Christian woman that's been around for a minute, right? So,
but I think we talked about that, she only has a couple verses, but there's a lot packed into those couple verses, no doubt. One of the commentators that I read this week, though, I thought had an interesting point. He paralleled Lydia with a rich young ruler. And he said, but they gave Lydia a name in the Bible.
Yeah.
The rich young ruler didn't even get a name. So although there's only a few verses, there's power in the fact that she's named.
Yeah.
There are very few named people in God's word. Like out of all the people that lived in the world at that time, a handful of them have been named. And the fact that, yes, there might only be a couple verses about her, she's named, and especially in that culture as a female, right? Like that just didn't exist. And so I thought that was just a cool way that this, article that I read on it was talking about, but she was named. So maybe only a couple verses, but named.
Right.
Which I thought
and
was
the
really
impact is huge. I mean, she's credited with starting the whole church in Europe. Right. And she only gets a couple of verses, which I think is really cool that, I don't know, I put that in my life and I think, I don't know, I think when it comes to the end, I might have a verse.
Right.
Right.
Could you imagine if you had a verse in the Bible?
But I think like in general, people are going to say,
oh yeah,
blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And then we're all going to move on and go to the next thing. And so I think, like, isn't that true of how God created women? Right? Is that we got our fingers in so many things, but yet we're so impactful. And our stories don't always make
it's a blip.
the paper or whatever. It's a blip. Yep. So anyway, I thought that was cool.
So yeah, so just again, a little background for those of you. A lot of you know a lot about Lydia. Some of you maybe have never heard of her. So she is a blip in the New Testament, in the book of Acts. We know very little about her other than the fact that she sells purple cloth, which there's so much wrapped in that. I dug way deep in the weeds that the purple cloth came out of these sea snails.
Oh, me too.
And it takes like 10,000
or whatever.
10,000 sea snails to make I just went down this whole rabbit trail of the purple cloth. I'm not sure why I went down that rabbit trail, but I think the biggest takeaway from the purple cloth is the fact that it lends itself to, in my mind, two things. One, she was wealthy. She's not going to deal in that kind of cloth in that day and age. And that's pretty much everybody says that. So she herself was wealthy. But then I thought the other cool thing was the fact that she chose, I can't remember which commentator it was, her business, she chose to sell a product that was materialistic on the surface. So it wasn't like she was selling all natural organic health food that's going to help everybody, or vitamins, or
we should get the grass-fed skin people to sponsor us. Actually, I just thought of that.
There you go. We would love that.
Grass-fed skin. We're going to call you.
That's cool that she's selling what the world would say is basically materialistic. And the guy talked about the verse that says women shouldn't have jewelry and braided hair. And so there was this image that women are supposed to be generic
and nondescript.
Right. And then here she is like, not only am I selling and am I wealthy and am I all that, but I'm selling stuff that's going to look good. Like she cared about that.
Into important people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's a lot of we can get into the weeds in that too, a lot of that, but I think that's cool. So she sells purple cloth. She's wealthy.
And she really isn't a church person. She's not a preacher. True. She's not like an apostle that was following anybody. Like she was just sort of, she's not particularly famous, right? She was just a CEO.
Right.
That was CEO. Good at what she did. And we talked a little bit the other day about like her leadership abilities and stuff. And we can jump into that at a different time. But, she had a household, which, although she gets 3 verses or whatever it is, 5 verses, I mean, every word is like so important to talk about her household.
Right.
Like
she
ran a household.
Some stuff, right?
Yeah. So
she did. Well, and I think, I don't know if I ever caught this until this time, as much as I've studied Lydia, she had to move for this. She was raised in Thyatira. I love it. Yeah. And then she moved to Philippi. And everything that I could uncover about that was they don't know why. Did she move because she was married and her husband was from Philippi? Did she move for the business? Because the purple cloth, that was what she was selling, came from Thyatira.
Right.
So she started that business or had the resources. I mean, when you think of it in modern day, like it's going to be like, I'm from Pittsburgh. Steel comes from Pittsburgh. So the purple cloth came from Thyatira.
Right.
But she was living and selling it in Philippi. So
she was importing it.
She was right. So was she going back and forth, which I thought was really interesting, but she was living in Philippi. So she's moved for the business.
Yeah.
Because she had to come up with the purple cloth in Thyatira. So then she moved. So, I mean, there was definite business savvy moves that were being made by this woman so that she could generate revenue to give back to God.
Right.
Which is super cool.
Right.
Super cool.
Although I don't think like initially that's what the plan was.
No,
which I think is so cool.
Right.
Like God opens her heart, and that's the first thing that she's able to do is say, "Well, this is where it's all going."
Yeah.
Right. Come on in. I'm going to support you, and we can get to that. But I mean, she was a follower of God, or she was a worshiper.
She was a worshiper, but
I'm sure that she wasn't motivated by that.
Right. True. At the beginning.
At the beginning.
Yeah, you're right.
Right.
True.
I think she sort of was like really was able to make a switch which again, I go back to like, that is a hard thing to do from a leadership perspective. I'm over here, we're doing material things, we're following what culture wants, we're doing this.
We're making money, we're strategically planning.
Right. And we're going to get bigger and we're going to do all these things. And now we're going to switch because we're giving it all back to God's kingdom.
True.
So
that's true.
I thought that was interesting.
A true heart change.
It's a heart change.
Right.
Good.
Right. She met Jesus and change happened.
Right.
Even in her business.
Like
her personal and her business.
Not like as part of our strategic plan. It's like tomorrow, we're going to,
that's good.
So
that's good. Well, and I thought it was interesting to just, again, a little bit more about Lydia, and then we'll jump into the hospitality side of things. But if you read the verses prior to when the few little verses come in about her, Paul was going to Asia. And God gave him a vision that said, nope, don't go to Asia. I want you to go to Macedonia. And there was almost like you could hear it in the verses, almost like, well, but we were supposed to be going to Asia. Like we were on the way to Asia. And then he gets this drastic vision that says, wait, we're going to go over here to Macedonia, which no one had been to Macedonia at that point. And when he gets to Macedonia, he goes to Philippi, and the first person he meets is Lydia, and he leads her to Christ, and she becomes the first convert in Europe.
Right.
But he wasn't aiming there. He was aiming for Asia, which is so funny because that's where Thyatira was. Where she was from was Asia. But instead, God does this like, whoop, we're going to go over here and we're going to catch Lydia. And then we're going to let Lydia come to know Christ. And Lydia, obviously, through her business, has this back and forth between Thyatira and Philippi because she's getting the purple cloth in Thyatira and bringing it to Philippi.
Right.
So he averts Thyatira, comes over to Philippi, gets Lydia, she comes to know Christ, serves the Lord wholeheartedly, and then takes it back to Thyatira. And verses later in Acts says, and the gospel was opened in Thyatira. Well, how did it get opened in Thyatira? It got opened because Lydia was going back and forth with this purple cloth. And then there's the verse in Philippians, I think it's 4:3 or something, that it says, and the women, I can't remember the word right now, the women something, they helped Paul in the gospel spread or whatever. These women helped Paul spreading the gospel. And I think, it doesn't give names, it just says these women. But it's right after we hear that the gospel was to Thyatira. That's Lydia.
Yeah, exactly.
That's Lydia. Yeah. I mean, so God redirected him to catch Lydia so that the gospel could be to Philippi and to Thyatira.
Yeah. I know, isn't it amazing? Like when God does stuff like that, you're just like, and you look back on it and you're like, that was his plan the whole time.
Right, he knew that.
I love that. Yeah. And I think that goes to like one of the things that like we were saying earlier is like when God opens your heart and your life, everything comes with it, right? And, you know, you end up, he knows where to find you, no matter where you are.
That's right.
And then he opens it up and then like the whole world can change. Yeah, that's good. I mean, the whole world can change. He found her in Philippi.
He redirected Paul. Right. I mean, the greatest apostle of all times to catch Lydia.
To go talk to some women at the riverside.
Well. Yeah.
Right.
Well. That's so cool. That's so cool.
And I loved when some of the commentary I read was like the faith led her to action. And, you know, I know we say that, but it's really like, wow, right? Like she took action. I think it's so easy for us to say, I need confirmation of that. I need 3 people that confirm that. If it's the Lord's will. And I am going to have my 3 people praying for that. And, you know, I think that we have to remember sometimes that God he just says go and you should go, right? Because sometimes you do need confirmation. I'm not saying you don't.
Sure. But, I mean, there's all that. But I think we lean as Christians way too into the
I need confirmation
before
I like that because then it's not my fault.
Right. I don't have to go.
Oh, I don't have to just listen. I can, I tend to.
So I think that's a little bit of Lydia's background. That's who she is. I think where we wanted to land today, as you heard in the intro, is we really want to lean into what happened after she gave her life to Christ. So she meets Paul at the well on the Sabbath, worshiping with women outside of the city. Paul and Luke sit down and talk with her. She gives her life to Christ, and then I think it's the and then that we want to focus on today.
Right. And then her whole household got baptized.
Her whole household.
I know.
Cool
I love the fact that her whole household got baptized. And I don't know if we joked about it on the podcast or not, but I mean, I have full faith that if I said to my family, come on, we're all going over here, they wouldn't all do it. Right. Or my office. They'd be like, yeah, no, I don't think that's it. Yeah. McDonald's, maybe.
Right.
Chick-fil-A, probably. But
I can't get my people to coordinate for the Easter weekend. I'm like, okay. I literally sent the family group text the other day. I'm like, okay, listen, you're all coming in for this weekend.
Yeah.
You're welcome to go out with your friends on Friday night. Every other night,
every minute
day is mine. Other than you guys can have Friday night. And I can't coordinate that. One of them's like, well, my friends went Saturday. And so, yeah, there's no way I could say it. And even my few would follow along.
Right. We try.
Yeah.
We try. So, yeah. So I think like, I loved, one commentator said this, your house can become holy ground when it's available to God. And I thought, that isn't how I always think about it. And that leads to hospitality, and that leads to what we were talking about with the hospitality, and that it's not always, if we wait to do hospitality for perfection, it's not going to happen. Right. I mean, we joked about like, nobody's coming for my cooking, right? Like it's
getting Lucky Charms at my house.
Right. I mean, you're not coming for my cooking.
No.
You know, and if I have to wait until I put chocolates on pillows and excuse me, the right soap in the bathrooms and stuff, like it's not going to happen. And so I think I love that it's like, if I invite you into my home, I often say it's my sanctuary. It's my introverted place to go, and I meet God there. But gosh, I'm not sharing that. Right? I'm not sharing that all the time when I could. Right?
And I think when you look at Lydia, it almost seemed, it was immediate. She met Jesus at the well with Paul and Luke, and then immediately her household gives their life to Christ. So that had to be through her leadership and her demonstration of it. Like she had to, I just envision her running back going, I met Jesus and you have to do this. And that shows that she had such a great relationship with her household. And again, we don't know who's in her household. We don't know if she's married. We don't know if she had kids. We don't know if these were servants and, you know, people that lived with her. We don't know if these were employees. We don't really know. We just know there was the household. But she ran back, and there was such a respect for her that it was like immediate. And then they gave their life to Christ and they got baptized.
And I love like that whole follow me while I follow Christ.
Right.
Is like right there.
Right there. Like
I mean,
right now, this is what we're doing.
That many demonstrations of that. Yeah. Right. So I love that. Sorry.
No, I agree. And then I think the hospitality comes in where she says to Paul and to Luke and to whoever's traveling with them, because there's lots of them, come into my house and stay. She didn't ask if there was a husband, like you said. If we bring home a dog, we're in trouble, let alone, here's some men that I met at the well and I just brought them to the house. So I think she just invited them into the house, which was amazing. And then I think we see the story a couple chapters later where they're imprisoned. Paul and them are imprisoned, and then the guard, and then they leave. And they immediately go to her house, which meant that was the place where they felt safest, because they had been imprisoned.
In trouble at my house. Those people that are in jail probably shouldn't come in here. But it'd be like, no, like, what are you doing?
So, honey, I just have 2 jailbirds that are at the door, and I've invited them in.
They've been released from jail. They're fine.
It's not federal charges, so we're good. Like, just minimal charges, and they were released. But I think the fact that Paul and Luke went directly to her house showed the fact that her hospitality was genuine, because that was the first place they wanted to run.
Right.
She opened up her house.
It was home.
It was home.
Yeah.
So I think seeing that, here's a woman that had great wealth and great influence, had a great conversion, and then
busy.
And she was busy. She was very busy.
Yeah.
She had to be. She's running back and forth from Philippi on a donkey.
She was busy. I mean, like, what are we talking about?
Right.
We're busy.
Right. She was busy.
Yeah. We could take in jailbirds because
we have all the time in the world.
We have all the time.
So I'll take
it God's way. We do have more time.
Right, we do. You're right. But I think that's so cool. Like you're saying, I mean, she gave her life to Christ, converted everybody around her,
right,
and then opened up her home.
Right.
Isn't that the pattern we want to follow? I want to give my life to Christ. I want to convert as many people as I can around me, and then I want to open up my home and my heart and my life to them. And I think she's an example of that.
And I think the exactly, like, that's a reflection of who we want to be, right? But I also think as women in this culture, in this day, that we end up with what culture says about hospitality is you have to be a good cook, right? You got to put the candles out. You have to have your nice napkins. Your house has to be clean. And so we tend to, like, I don't have any friends that will just like stop in because I've made my house available to say, look, if you're, in the neighborhood, stop in, like text me and say, hey, you want to grab a cup of, like, everything is so planned and so, oh, I don't want anybody to come in here because the flowers are dead. Right. So I think it's so easy for us to have gotten that we've missed the actual, like,
heart of hospitality.
The heart of the hospitality, because we've made it a cultural thing, which says my house has to be nice. We have to be in the right clothes. The kids can't be fighting. There can't be laundry on the floor. Right. Like, so I think,
do you think it's worse for those of us that are so busy and working so much versus somebody who maybe, I mean, that's always my, the stay-at-home moms. And I'm like, oh, it feels like, and maybe that's just because I'm not in that world.
Yeah.
But it feels like the stay-at-home moms kind of hang at each other's house. Like they come over, they bring the kids, they do that. Do you think they do better at that than those of us maybe that work, that I'm like,
I don't know.
I'm gone all day. I don't have time. When I come home at night,
Right. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know, I guess, if I have the posture of whether it's my home or not, like being open to stop me so I can honor you by listening to you and sharing my heart and your heart and putting it all out there. Like, that's hospitality. And so, yes, our homes are part of that.
Right,
because
but it's not just the home.
And so I think, to answer your question, I don't know the answer to that because I haven't been a stay-at-home mom. But I do think that all of us have a tendency to put that up and be like, got to get to that thing, got to get to that thing, got to get to that thing. And we don't necessarily open our heart to the moment where I can be hospitable to you and how's it, like, really care when I say what's going on.
And I think hospitality, like you said, is not just in the home. So what does that look like in the workplace?
Right.
Like, how am I hospitable at work? How am I hospitable, in life, wherever I'm at? I think that goes beyond. There's a definition of hospitality. It says cordial and generous reception of or disposition towards guests. That's what we all get. Making others feel welcome and loved. And then it gave 4 keys to hospitality. And it said, reflecting God's love, which was first. And I think that takes all the guessing out of hospitality, as if you're just reflecting God's love.
Right.
Spiritual growth.
I'm going to write this down.
Yeah, these are good. See, you can write these down. 4 points. They weren't mine. So reflecting God's love, spiritual growth, welcoming, and community building. And I think,
wait, what was the third one?
Welcoming, like a welcoming,
and
then community building. And so I think the welcoming side goes to, it doesn't matter if the toilet paper is right. It doesn't matter if the chocolate's on the pillows. It doesn't matter if the dishes are put away. I mean, it can be that simple.
It's like the real world.
And I think of that even in work. It doesn't matter if, I think it in work here, especially sometimes I'll be having a meeting at the coffee shop and something will happen and I want to jump up and help a customer. And then I'm not welcoming to the person that I'm sitting there talking to, because I'm like, in the back of my mind, business is going on and I got to get to the business. So
I have to save this.
Because somehow my latte is going to be better than somebody else's, which it's not. But I think even in the business sense of it, welcoming in that regard. But I think the key is just knowing that it's relational and it's Christ-centered first. Everything else is of no value.
Well, and I think, one of the ways that I think I feel most hospitable is when I'm listening and being open to, not thinking about how I'm going to respond, and setting that person up to be successful if I can, right? If this person is in my house, I want to honor this person. I want this person to feel welcomed. I want them to feel part of our community, whether it's work but also that, like, I care enough that I want to help. Like, you came here because we're having community, because we're having a conversation, but like, let's get to the heart of where you are and where I am, which I think is so important, and we so miss.
We do miss it.
We so really miss it. So
well, and I think we were talking about Easter coming up.
Yes.
So I know in our house, and we've talked about this. So to our listeners, as they're learning more about us, Sean and I just moved a year ago to a beautiful piece of property. But the property came with a trailer. So we went from a 3,500 square foot brand new home where we raised our kids in Nucky, beautiful. I mean, and it was a blessing, right? And we are now in a double wide. And he makes fun of me that I always talk about the double wide, but it is a double wide. Yeah. I mean, like Cannon, our youngest, he runs from side to side, and he's like, "Look, the house moves." And
what was it called when you couldn't close till you had those things?
Oh, we had to have the tie downs, the straps. Right. We had to have the straps.
That's like serious business.
Yeah, I mean, it was legit, right? So for Sean and I, it was great. We got out a little bit. We got some land. It's what we wanted. We hoped to build. We understood why we were making that transition. Right. And I didn't realize how much it would impact me until I invited the first people over to the house. Yeah. And I remember going, oh, yeah, like I'm inviting them into my trailer, which is fine. I know it in my mind. Like in my mind, I know it has no bearing on what people think. I mean, knowing it intellectually though, and processing it in my heart. I mean, there was a real humbling, like, oh, snap. Right. Now, again, I could say in my mind, there are people that live in tents in Africa and who live on the streets. And so I need to be thankful for the blessing of the trailer that I have. Right. But there was a real moment where I had to say, I'm okay inviting people into this house, even though there is, even if I put chocolates on the pillows. It's going to be really bad. Right. I mean, there are holes in the floor. I mean, it's just going to be bad. Right. But it doesn't allow me the opportunity to not be hospitable. Right. Like, I still have to do it.
Well, and the flip side is true of me.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Where I don't invite people because they immediately make a judgment. Yeah. And they're like, oh, you have an easy life because you have a big house. Right. And you have a garage and a guest house. Right. I mean, I immediately assume that they're going to make a judgment, right? Which is exactly what you're assuming.
And isn't that crazy how we both go to where we are guilty about whatever it is, from this end or that end, we deal with the guilt.
I'm just I'm almost embarrassed.
Yeah.
Right?
Of the blessings that God gave you. And I'm embarrassed of stupid stuff.
I mean, you have that beautiful property.
It is
a beautiful with a dog. I mean, it's like, we're going to have a jet ski there.
It is just,
we should take our photo there with a jet ski.
Oh, our photo. Yeah. So we heard that we need a photo.
We need a professional photo. So we should do it in a bathing suit. Good idea. Forget that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Forget it. No, we're not doing that.
But I was talking to Jen right before we came here, and she had just watched the first podcast and she was giving me some feedback, and she had a very good point, and it reminded me as she said this. She said, I loved hearing your interaction with Kristin. And she said, but I don't know if there are two people further apart when it comes, we were talking about finances, when it comes to that, like, and just lifestyles, where we came from and what we did. And she said, yet the fact that you two can sit there and laugh and have a genuine relationship, even though
that doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Like, I invited her to my trailer and she came.
Well, and we're like,
you came great.
It was great. I loved it. It reminded me of South Carolina where my mom lives. I love it.
It's so funny.
But I have the same insecurities. They're just at the opposite end where it's like I know somebody's going to say, oh, you have life easy, or you have this, or you have. I mean, just
funny. I didn't think about it on that end.
So anyway, we all have our insecurities, and I think that's part of the challenge of opening your home and your heart.
Exactly. And that's no excuse then. No matter what your insecurities are, I think the key is you look at Lydia. Yes. She was wealthy. She had all the reasons not to. And yet her first reaction was, I'm opening up my home to these jailbirds for the sake of Jesus. And I think that's where we don't have an excuse to not be hospitable, whether the house is nice or the house isn't nice, whether you have the time, you don't have the time. Right. It's a mandate that we see throughout all of Scripture that we are to be hospitable. And so I think with Easter coming up, I've got a crew coming in. Mm-hmm. So obviously my 3 kids are coming home, and my one son's bringing his girlfriend. So that's 4, which is great. Again, in our new little trailer, right? Yeah. So that's 4. My mother-in-law's coming in. Okay. Super fun. Yeah. My roommate from college and her husband and their 2 kids are all coming in, and their mom. Now, we can't all fit.
Camden?
Camden's not coming this time. So we've got a slew of people coming in. We can't fit. So we were like, I wonder if somebody has an RV that we can park beside and they can sleep in the RV.
My kids always want an RV.
We're trying to figure it out.
We can't park an RV in our driveway.
Yeah. No, we can. We've got property. We can park an RV. I don't know if we can plug it in and there's not sewage, but we're going to try. But I think this has really helped me say, just studying it this week, like, it doesn't matter that I don't have a bed for everybody. It doesn't matter you're sleeping on the couch.
Right, exactly.
Whatever. I mean, we're just opening up the house and saying it's, and my parents were great at this. I mean, and they've made it easier for me growing up. My parents always said, it's not ours, it's the Lord's.
Right.
And I know we've heard that, but they genuinely believed it. Right. We had people in our home all the time. Yeah. And it was all, where my friends hung out, where we hung out, we always did that. And so they lived a good example for me.
Yeah. Our house was always like that. And our house now is very much like that. But I think it's about lavishing whoever's in your space, right? And just with your time.
I love that. Let's make that the definition. Hospitality. Lavishing.
Yeah, we can lavish. Like, which means that you listen, which means it's lavishing someone with your time and energy. So, do you want to talk about?
All right, we're going to do stories,
we're
right?
Talk about,
we wanted to give you a few
this is the part that makes us laugh, so we have to talk about that.
We wanted to talk about Lydia. That's a lesson. We did it. Hopefully you got something out of it. Hopefully we spurred you on to be more hospitable, but then we thought we'd close with some stories of hospitality.
Okay, so tell us your hospitality fail.
So I have two.
Oh, great. I only have one.
Two. One is at my house, and one is when we went to someone's house and screwed it up. So I was going to do both sides. So
you're allowed.
We went to Jen's house. And again, beautiful home. They've got 3 girls, and they're very girly. And so their house is very perfect.
Yeah.
I had 2 boys and a girl. So my house is like 2 boys who are very close in age. Everything in our house is broke all the time because they're always fighting. They're always throwing a football, and it smells. Yeah. And we just get used to that. Those of you that have boys know how it's different. So we would go to Jen's house, and I would always be like, boys, please just try to be, and they were great, but try to be nice at Jen's house. And so they were at Jen's house one time, and they were running through the house, chasing each other, of course, doing something. And they flung open her back door, and it smashed the entire wall plaster on the back of the outside. I mean, just destroyed it. And I was like,
that would be my
so
boys.
Sorry. And they were, I mean, talk about hospitable. I instantly was like, boys, yelling and screaming. And both Greg and Jen were just like, Tammie, it's fine. And of course it wasn't fine. They were going to have to replaster the whole back wall of their house. It was not fine.
Right.
But they never made me feel bad. So my bad story is when we ruined Jen's. That's the one. The other one, this one's really bad. Not bad. We took in 2 foreign exchange students one summer. That was kind of our thing. Our house was here. This one, we had a big house, a nice house. And one was from Spain and one was from France. And they didn't know each other, but we took them the same summer. And we thought, this is just going to be so fun.
Did they overlap?
They were there at the same time.
Oh, they were at the same time. Okay.
Yep. So we gave one room. So we named it. And to the day we moved out of that house, we referred to the rooms as theirs. That's Lady's room and that's Manuela's room. Even when my kids moved into them, I'm like, oh, he's up in Lady's room. Like we just referred to it as that from that summer. And so one of them was an amazing experience. The other one was not. So started out with, I'm not coming to church with you. I'm going to stay home. Well, part of the process was they can't stay home by themselves. They go where you go. That's part of the experience. So we go to church and she refused to go. Oh, so then the dad was on the phone calling us from her country saying, she's not going with you. Oh, I mean, it just got really contentious. Yeah. We signed up for a non-smoker. We caught her smoking in the house all the time. So we had to call her out on that.
You had boys, so it didn't matter.
Then we had
probably smelled better.
Probably. Then we caught her. She was showing porn to my daughter.
Oh, nice.
I mean, in Bailey's 10 at this point.
Nice.
Yes, and it was with my daughter and a neighbor girl who was older. And the neighbor girl came up and was like, heads up. It was disastrous. And we had to get her removed from the house. It was, it was just a horrible situation.
Oh my gosh.
And it kind of scarred us a little bit because I was like, oh my gosh, we just let anybody in our house, right? What are we doing to, but interesting, when I was talking about this week and I said something to the boys, because I was telling them about this, they don't remember any of that.
Really?
Negativity. They were just like, it was so much fun to have them. And I was like, isn't that that's where we got, that's where all the things went wrong. Now I know why the boys do what they do. They just learned it from our
Right.
exchange
We
student.
were 5.
But I
They
think
let
it
us
was
smoke.
interesting that even what I thought was a bad experience
Yeah.
in hospitality,
They
my
thought was
kids
great.
didn't see it as that,
Yeah.
which was really
Isn't
cool.
it true?
Yep.
I mean, it's so true.
That was
Yeah.
cool. So that was nice.
That's cool.
Yeah, we had porn introduced into our
Nice.
house through
That's lovely.
hospitality.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Invite people into your house. You'll have porn. That's
Everybody. My
That's the
success
motto.
story is inviting somebody into my house. It's because you live in the woods.
That's, see, if we
No,
were at the
I'm just
trailer, it
kidding.
would have been fine.
I'm just kidding. So I think my biggest fail as I was thinking about this is like just not inviting, right? I think that is like where we set this house up. So like pretty much it's all replaceable. Our old house was very much like, can't bring sand in, take your shoes off, that's dirty, can't wrestle there, right? This house is very much like the floors match the dog color. So if there's dog hair on, right? Like, so, but I still don't invite people in, right? I think that's my biggest fail. And you said something the other day about, Martha and Mary and Martha getting such a bad rap. We sort of think, oh, have a Merry Christmas, not a Martha Christmas.
Right.
And,
Heard that.
you never heard that?
No, have a Merry Christmas, not a Martha Christmas. That's great.
You can use it.
I will.
Yeah, I don't think I made it up.
Oh,
But
that's
anyway.
great. I never heard it. That's awesome.
But like,
right.
we hear all these
Martha
things
gets
about
a bad
how
rap.
great Mary is,
Sat
Mary
at the
did
feet
this.
of Jesus.
But Martha invited him in.
I know.
Right?
That
and
shocked
I think,
me this week when I saw that.
I thought that was so great because that is my fail, is that I just don't take the time to invite people in. So having said that, I have a success.
Okay.
So
you have a Martha. You invited someone.
I did. I didn't. But even better, one of my son's friends, Andrew was going to be a junior in high school, and he met a guy and they were going to go play golf at college together. And I'm going to make it a short story because it's still an ongoing story,
Yes,
but it's awesome at this point. But he was having some issues at home and wasn't going to have a place to live. And Andrew said, "You need to come live with us." And this friend said, "Well, you have to talk to your parents." And Andrew, our son, said, "Oh, they'll be fine with it." And so like that was such a proud mommy moment.
Yeah.
Right? That like Rodney and I talk about that, like, oh my gosh, like our 15-year-old is inviting, or 16-year-old is inviting people into our home.
He did a Lydia.
And he did a Lydia.
He just invited them in.
He just said, "You're not.
Didn't
you
ask,
can't do that. You're not gonna not have somewhere to live, and you're coming to live at our house." And this young man said, "Well, don't you think you should ask?" and all that. And he said, "No,
That's
like
so
it's going to
cool.
be fine." So
I mean, and you guys have just, especially with this situation, I mean, it's not been a one-time invite. It's been years.
Yes, exactly. No, we're coming up on year 5.
Amazing. That's amazing.
He's a year older than Andrew, and he's graduating. Not supposed to. He's graduating in May, and he's coming back to live with Rodney and I, while Andrew's still at college.
Still gone.
Yeah.
That's
so
great.
So anyway, it's pretty funny. Story. But he's he is part of our family, and it's one of those things, like you say, like everybody says, "Oh my gosh, how have you done that?" But the truth of the matter is, he's given us so much that we can't
imagine not.
Like I can't imagine without not having him in our house, right? I mean, he's at Christmas, he's at Easter, he's at every holiday. He served a cup of Job. I mean, he's part of our life. So anyway, that's one of my success stories. But shall we wrap up sort of?
Yeah, we had one recently. I was going to say a positive. We had one recently. We opened our home to 2 different students who are PA students, and we knew one. And then she said,
"That's right.
Since you're doing it for me, would you do it for my roommate? She's coming before me." And we were like, "Sure." We didn't know this person from Adam. And so they show up at our house, and it was interesting because she was not a believer, not a Christian, but of a different faith and very strong in her faith, very different than our faith. And every night, part of their culture was you sit at the dinner table and have dinner. We are not the sit at the dinner table family.
Speaking of hospitality and cooking.
Ever, yeah,
right.
ever.
Right.
And I felt so obligated because she would just come in even by herself and she'd make dinner and she'd sit down at our table. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll sit with you.
Yeah.
So for 5 weeks, I sat with this young woman at the dinner table.
Yeah.
And got to hear her story and got to learn about a family and got to hear her faith story, even though it's a different faith story. And then I got the opportunity to share the gospel with her.
That's awesome.
Which it was really a cool way that, again, if you wouldn't have opened up your house, I didn't know this person from Adam, but because we were able to open up our house, we had the opportunity to share Jesus with her. And who knows what comes of that. And that's, we did what we did.
But like this side of heaven, you're never going to know where that goes.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
so it's cool. So hospitality works.
Hospitality
works.
It does. Hospitality works. So
okay.
As we wrap up,
I think we're getting to a better closing.
We're closing. So we're probably longer than we said we were going to be, but we have so much enjoyed, I think, the sharing our lives with you and hearing your feedback and just, I don't know, just being able to laugh with each other and share our laughter. And so that's been so fun. Hopefully the lesson was impactful to you. Next week, our legend is going to be special.
Yeah.
So we're very excited about that. And then we are really, really excited to share our laughter with you. And so we are going to be here at Cup of Job in Murray Hill, which is at 934 Edgewood Avenue South.
Right next to the Murray Hill Theater.
Right next to the Murray Hill Theater. Right. And so we're going to be here from 4 to 6 on April 22nd. And we are hoping that you will come join us and just laugh with us. And if you don't want to be on camera, you don't have to be. But if you want to be, we'll be happy to share our microphones that are now working.
Yes.
And anyway, we still look forward to continuing this process and hope that it's been as enriching for you, at least as it has been for us. So we look forward to sharing laughs with you on the April 22nd. Is it stopping?